Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. I'm Rowena Hicks, your host, and I wonder, are you working in a school where you think that small things or maybe some big things could make a really significant impact to both you, your team, the culture, the children in your school, the parents? Well, I have a wonderful guest today, David Huntingford. Welcome, David.
Hello there. Hi.
He's a head teacher, and I caught a post of his on LinkedIn that really caught my eye. He was talking about the impact of some small changes and some big changes that he's made in his school, both for the pupils and for the staff. And I was quite astonished at how brave he's been, actually. So I've invited him on to talk to us about what he's doing in his school and what the impact is. So, David, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello there, everybody. My name's David Huntingford. I'm head teacher of William Ford Church of England Junior School in Dagenham, which is in East London.
Great, thank you. So, David, tell us, what would you say has been the thing that you've changed in your school or you've implemented that has had the biggest impact?
Oh, that's a good question. I started at William Ford in September 2020, which was right in the middle of lockdown, which is a great time to change school, where you go in and you've got so many ideas and so much you want to achieve. And you end up spending your first year dealing with bubbles and isolation and various tiers and different requirements that we had to do. But it did give me time to really get to sort of know the school, and particularly in the subsequent year after the academic year 21-22, see what it is the school needed and the area needed as well. And for those of you who don't know, Dagenham is an area with very high levels of deprivation. And in speaking to the children, it was very clear that many of them had very low aspirations for the future, that they didn't have big dreams about jobs that they wanted to do. And I know there is an argument to say, well, of course, at that age, they don't, but they just weren't aware of what is out there in the world as well. And also became very aware that just there wasn't a lot of hope in the area as well. And a lot of children, you'd ask them about their sort of hopes and dreams, and you get a lot of shrugs. And it just came across as life was difficult and was more like something you just had to survive. And this sort of over the sort of coming terms in a couple of years, we came up for our curriculum intent, just a summary of what we wanted to do. And that was, we want our pupils to thrive, not just survive. And that is today, that is tomorrow, and that is out in the future as well. And then really unpick what that means as well, that we want them to be successful, that we want them to work in jobs which they find meaningful and that they enjoy and they look forward to going to work. We want them to be healthy, both physically, spiritually and mentally. We want them to be happy, and we also want them to be empowered to make a difference, both in the area where they live, so they're not looking to move away, but they're looking to stay and improve the area, but also in the global world as well. And I think bringing that in and then aligning everything that we do within the curriculum to that not only benefits the pupils, but it's exciting for the teachers as well. And it is something to sort of look forward to in the lesson, rather than trying to cram the pupils full of knowledge or having real sort of set schemes that you've got to stick to as well.
Okay, I love that. I love the heart of what you're doing, but perhaps teachers are thinking, oh my goodness, that just sounds like an awful lot of work, no schemes. How am I going to have the time to plan it? And who's going to help me? And how's it going to work in reality for the staff?
Very good question. I should be very clear. This is a way about delivering the curriculum rather than completely changing the curriculum. So we do still have schemes and things in place, particularly if they are beneficial as well. But rather than saying we are, I don't know, learning about the Romans and we're going to look at a PowerPoint about the Romans and then we're going to write about the Romans, and the children thinking, well, why on earth am I doing this? We will think about things of, well, let's tell them that they're going to make a documentary for the BBC about the Romans as well. So we sort of implement the curriculum through this idea as well. And then we'll promote that as a career, or the year 3 unit on exercise in PE and healthy eating as well. Let's get the children working in roles as personal trainers, and again, promote that as a future career as well. So they're doing it for a purpose. We call it purposeful learning as well, that there is a reason behind doing this rather than teacher says, I need to do it. But it does ask a lot. It means you've got to think a lot more around the curriculum as well. So as any sort of leadership framework shows, if you're introducing something new, something needs to give. And as controversial as it was for us, that was marking.
Oh, so tell me about that.
So I remember being a teacher, and I remember being in upper key stage 2 in year 5 and then in year 6, and the dreaded weekly big write. Back in the days of levels, where you would end up at the end of a very busy week when you were tired, suddenly having 30 exercise books with perhaps 2 sides of writing, maybe more as well, which you needed to mark, correct, highlight, write a comment for them to respond to, or give them a task to do, 2 stars and a wish, and give a level as well, 3B, 4A, and all of these sort of things. And although the levels aren't there, there are various guises and things that still exist. And I remember having done this, and it would take 3 to 4 hours, perhaps over the weekend to do, watching the children pick up their books on Monday morning and watching one boy open his book and just go, oh, and put it down. And even then I was thinking, what is the point of all of this marking? And I'm not against feedback. I think feedback for adults and children is a great way to move them on. But all of this written writing, all of this writing verbal feedback, if it has happened, writing endless comments, sometimes writing the same thing over and over again. Who is it for? Is it because we SLT expect to see it? Is it because it will impress Ofsted or any other inspection body who's coming in? Is it because the parents at Parents' Evening expect to see it in the books because that's what they had when they were a child? And actually, we formed something called a lesson reflection sheet. And all it had at the top was what the learning objective was. And then the assumption was the pupils had met it. And then there are 2 boxes. Children who had not met the learning objective and what would happen in the next lesson as a consequence of that, whether it's going to be working with a teacher, whether it's going to be additional support before the lesson, maybe an adapted task, and also children who had well exceeded the LO and perhaps the pitch wasn't quite right for them as well. And how were they going to be extended going forward as well? And instead of writing the same thing over and over again, teachers were using these sheets. If a cover teacher was coming in, they were able to look at it, knew who to extend, who needed support as well, who perhaps was absent. It meant that teachers could put questions on the board as a sort of introduction task or a recap task and just signpost different children to what question they were meant to be doing. And it saved so much time. And suddenly teachers were not taking home piles and piles of exercise books, and they had much more time and energy to invest into their planning and the curriculum, which, let's face it, is the exciting part of teaching.
Absolutely. And teachers tell me that, they came into teaching because they're passionate about sort of supporting the children and helping them learn. And, they want to be creative. And one really young teacher, I think she was about 25, said to me, I have to follow my schemes so tightly that all the creativity is gone and I'm so burnt out anyway. And actually it sounds like you're recreating opportunities for that creativity. And also, of course, the Sutton Trust
Absolutely.
data research says immediate positive feedback is what brings on the learning. It's not the marking.
Absolutely.
So gosh, lucky teachers, I guess. What else have you done, David, that has made a difference to your staff and perhaps to you?
What else? Obviously, a big part of this marking thing is, as an employer, I am tasked with making sure that teachers are not taking work home with them. And that's quite right as well. And in any industry, there's talk of legislation about disconnecting and switching off when you're at home. And there was one Sunday afternoon where I was doing exactly that. But I was very aware my son, who was in year 6 at the time, was in our dining room, and he was getting more and more stressed over this worksheet that his school had sent home. And when I looked at it, It was the most pointless worksheet. It'd clearly been found on the internet, printed off in a hurry, and sent out. And he'd not done the learning really to be able to answer this. And I just thought, why, as employers, we are making sure our adults, our staff, are not working from home. Why are we not doing the same for our children? Why are we teaching them at a young age that the home is an extension of school? Teachers can come home and switch off and totally forget about work, or I hope they can, at least anyway, and are able to relax with their families. But children are not given that right. And it didn't seem right. And again, why are we doing it? Is it because Ofsted expect it? Parents expect it? Because it's what we've done for the last 100 years? It just didn't make sense to me. So we actually took the decision to ban homework. There's a couple of caveats, a couple of exceptions. Of course, if a child is so engaged by something they're learning at school and they're wanting to do a project with their family, or they want to do their own research, of course the teacher will celebrate that and look at it as well. And indeed, for families who have asked for ideas, we've published on our website different activities that you can do at home if the idea of no homework is absolutely terrifying for you. But what we don't do is send out lots and lots of just worksheets that have been found off random websites. That cuts back on marking quite a lot, and that preparation of finding it as well. And although there's a few questions at the start from parents, it's recognised that this has been a good approach to do as well, particularly in a deprived area where a number of children don't have somewhere quiet where they can sit or work, or don't have an adult available who is able to support them with their homework. The other thing we do ask for, though, is that the children do read, because reading should be for pleasure. And we want children to develop that love of literacy and love of reading as well. So we do ask for children to read. And because all of us as adults will revise before a test, we will encourage, not insist, but encourage revision before things like SATs. And I could talk a lot more about SATs and some things we've done around testing as well, if you would like.
Wow. So, okay. So just briefly talk to us about testing and perhaps impact on both the pupils and the staff.
Most teachers, I think, probably 95% of teachers I've ever spoken to within primary schools are against SATs. And when you ask for reason why, it's about what exactly are they measuring, the amount of stress they put on children, the anxiety it can cause, how it's fueling the mental health epidemic across the country as well. But what a lot of schools have not considered is that some testing is within our control. And because, again, we've been doing it for 100 years, the weekly spelling test is something that can cause children immense anxiety. And not just in my school, but I'm sure in other schools as well, attendance can be a little bit of an issue on Fridays because children just don't want to sit that spelling test. And what I found when I looked into this is, first of all, there is not a jot of research that supports spelling tests as a way of improving spelling. Teaching spelling, teaching the rules, the patterns, absolutely, yes, that improves spelling. But testing them on it doesn't. And I asked the pupils about their views on spelling tests, and the only children who liked it were those who would regularly get 10 out of 10 or 15 out of 15. Those who didn't absolutely hated it. And they said, we would be delighted if this went. So that's what we did. We removed spellings. Some of the parents, again, found it a little bit difficult, but actually we found attendance improved on Fridays. Perhaps concerning in a way, we had less safeguarding because some children were being punished in inappropriate ways for performing badly on the spelling test as well. And that didn't rest easy with me. It was, again, less marking for the teachers who didn't have to sit and mark this, and also providing more time in the classroom because we're not having to administer these spelling tests or find time for the children to mark each other's or whatever system was being used. But it also improved the mental health as well. British children are some of the most tested children in the world. And this is just one thing that we can do to take away some of that burden from them as well.
Yeah, I love that. So important. Um, We talked before about accountability and autonomy for your leaders. Can you talk about that and what you've decided to do, what your priorities are there and the impact?
So, ever since I started at William Ford, I've been in a very, very tricky financial situation with no reserves, rising staff costs. One of the issues of sort of retaining your staff is it's great you have such an experienced staff team, but very quickly it becomes a very expensive staff team. And unfortunately, like many people watching will have had to have done, is you have to go through a restructuring or a reorganization process. One of the problems I encountered was every teacher had a TLR, and it was in a 3-form entry junior school. That budget just could not sustain that, so I had to restructure leadership. And the approach I actually went with, knowing it was going to be very unpopular at first, but it would embed, was to really have a limited number of leaders and make the role meaningful. So I actually reduced 13 TLRs to 4 TLR2B posts, leading a group of subjects. And what that meant was I was able to set aside time weekly for them in order that they can not only undertake the work that goes with such a role, but also be in class without having to bid or beg for time where they can go and watch an art lesson or speak to pupils about geography or monitor RE resources as well. And although there's an argument some of these things can be done before or after school, if you're looking at lessons and you are talking to pupils, that can't. And that made a real difference, because it actually meant if the art leader was saying, oh, I'm quite concerned about the art books in 5X, we could say, well, in your next session, go in and work with that teacher as well. And don't just have a conversation and say you need to improve your art books, but actually show them what you want to do, model the expectations, coach them, mentor them as well. And they had time to do it. And what we found was, as we had external people coming in, various deep dives as well, all subjects were performing well because every subject had a priority. And although I would want to know what the leaders were doing and what their priorities were and use that to feed into the bigger picture of the school development plan, I would trust them to say, well, I'm aware that maths in year 3 and science in year 4 are concerned, so I'm putting my energy into those at the moment, and I'm leaving DT just to sort of tick along at the moment, and then I will reevaluate in a couple of weeks' time as well. And it meant the leaders' roles really were meaningful. So we've got language and literacy, we've got STEM subjects, humanities, and then creative and well-being as well. And everything had a priority. And where perhaps some of those groups sound a little bit less in terms of the workload than perhaps STEM, which is quite a heavy one, those leaders were more than happy to take on additional responsibilities like leading our school radio station or being responsible for collective worship and things like that as well, which again are all other important aspects across the school.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So I know we need to finish in a minute. I just want to ask quickly, you mentioned about some of your leaders going into work with some of the other staff to support them and things. Do you have a focus particularly on how you manage CPD?
How we manage CPD, everything I think comes back for me to the school development plan. And what I'd like is to meet with leaders regularly to find out what their concerns are, to look at data, look at things for myself as well, and come up with clear priorities of what it is we need to do. Doing a staff survey at the end of the year, asking what they perceive their CPD needs to be as well, all feeds into that. And then from the school development plan, I will set the performance management targets. What is the point of someone having a performance management target about improving geography if the school development plan is all about history, for example? We're just going to end up duplicating, and then things won't be done well. So looking at what the school priorities are, then setting those performance management targets as well, using that then to set the inset plan as well, to make sure that we're not doing 1 week geography, 1 week maths, and then you're thinking, well, I'm going to embed that in my maths lesson. Oh, no, I've got to do something in art now. So maths and geography have been forgotten about. And then, of course, we've got to do that GDPR session that's been hanging over us for a while, and trying to actually make sure there is a theme running across CPD. So we've had things like greater depth in writing, or employing our purposeful learning approach across the humanities, things like that as well. So it builds on. Rods and Shine principles of instruction as well was a very useful one, because that spanned across all subjects, rather than just one inset day on it and now let's move on, but actually drip feeding this, revisiting it as well, and making sure that it's actioned in the classroom, but also doing activities like during assembly time, having children being taught in a small group and other adults observing, and having a sort of peer feedback model, because sometimes you develop more by having your friends and colleagues feeding back to you in a low stakes environment, rather than a member of SLT sat there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that final one. I've found that very impactful in my career. So obviously my passion is for us to find ways for teachers to be more happy, for leaders to be more happy, to thrive in their roles, to be the best version of themselves. And you've given us lots of ways that you focus on that for your staff, actually. I just wonder, can you talk to us about, I know you've had to restructure, but how is your staff retention, and how is staff work related stress, if you like?
Retention, very, very good. Very rare that I need to recruit. And in fact, I think the only recruitment I will be doing this year is linked to someone who wants to go part-time but still remain at the school, and the fact that our SEND base is having to expand, and is going to require additional staffing as well. I'm not going to lie and say that there is no one ever goes off with stress. What we have found is the stress that members of staff have gone off with is rarely work related. In fact, I think very few issues have actually work related stress. Obviously, we're humans, things happen in our own personal lives as well. Sometimes some very tragic things, which has an impact. But education is a difficult job, and pupils can be very, very challenging. Yes, there are a lot of demands. It's still a very packed curriculum. There's still a lot of accountability. A lot of my staff found Ofsted to be a very, very difficult and traumatic experience. And as much as we tried to protect them from that, we did have members of staff who were in tears because they felt they were let the school down with Ofsted if something hadn't gone quite the way that they'd wanted it to, or just not feeling confident going into the meetings, which was really upsetting to see. Parents can be challenging at times as well, because particularly if they're fighting their own battles and got their own issues to deal with, which quite often can be taken out on school staff, particularly office staff, who can be left very upset, even traumatized sometimes by encounters that they've had with various individuals. So I think we're in a very, very good place. People like working at William Ford. When there is someone looking at leaving, it is more to leave the profession rather than leave the school. And that is something very, very proud of. But as I mentioned earlier, there is the flip side of retaining your staff means you do get a very expensive staff very quickly, even if we're sort of putting in CPD, so people are able to go for promotions and things like that at other schools. We're finding people don't want to, they want to stay.
Wow. Well, you are rightly proud of that, I would say. And it's quite inspirational talking to you, David, because I think people listening will say, wow, we want to hear about, what else he's doing, how it works, how does he manage it? If they want to talk to you or contact you, how would they do that best?
Easiest way, probably email, which is dhuntingford@williamfordschool.co.uk. Goes straight through to myself. I am also on LinkedIn, just sort of getting my head around that a little bit and publishing on there. I'm not overly active on there, but gradually getting the hang of that as well. And of course, people are welcome to pick up the phone and arrange to come and visit and see us in action as well. Speak to the staff, meet the pupils, have a look at our environment. But also, we do keep our website very much up to date with a lot of what we do. We got good in our recent Ofsted in all areas except personal development, where we were outstanding. with the line from the inspector who actually described it as outstanding and some as well. So we're very, very proud of our personal development offer for pupils, and a lot of that is available on our website, which is www.williamfordschool.co.uk.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, David, for your time and your honesty. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for listening.
No problem at all.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.